College football talk with Steve Deace. Need I say more? We always enjoy our conversation with Steve. We learn a lot, and I brace myself depending on the topic. When it gets a little close to home, it's not as comfortable for me as it was, say 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know why, but it's just the comfort level is not quite what it was. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, brother. Good to see you. How are you?
I am doing well. Good to see you as well. Appreciate you stopping by. People enjoy these conversations, as you well know. All right. Steve's work, Michigan podcast. And so that's a great place to start. I saw the video post. I did not see or watch it yet. It was titled something to the effect of, "We need a quarterback." QB1 there at Michigan. Truly? Yes?
I think so because of this, Mark. I think that we have more coming back than people think. I don't think people understand that a lot of the guys that aren't going to be back had more eligibility returning. I mean, we could have returned almost the entire starting 22 of the Rose Bowl. But we played so many guys the last few years. And next year in the draft, we won't have an all-time record of guys invited to the combine. But, Mark, I think it's entirely possible that in next year's draft, we'll have the first defensive tackle taken, Mason Graham. I think it's possible to have the first tight end taken, Colston Loveland. I think it's possible that I know we're going to have the first corner taken in Will Johnson. He might be the first defensive player taken in the draft, period. I think it's possible we'll have the first running back taken in Donovan Edwards if he has the kind of year that he can have, especially with his skill set for today's NFL. I mean, we're looking, and you throw Kenneth Grant in there, I think he's probably a first rounder at defensive tackle. So next year's draft class is the opposite of this year's, where there wasn't a lot of great talent at the top, but it was very deep. Next year, we may only have 8 or 9 guys drafted, which is still a lot, but we could have 4 or 5 first-round draft picks. There is still a lot of talent on this team. I looked at the overall depth on Saturday. I was way more impressed than I expected to be. We're kind of now in that mode of Michigan programs in the past where even if we're only recruiting into the teens, like we have the last few years, these guys are now 2 to 3 years into a strength and conditioning program at a high level, Mark. They look like men, and so we have a chance to be better this year than I thought. That's why we need a quarterback. If this were truly a year where, I think 8-4 is the ceiling, then I would throw Alex Orji in there and let him grow. Okay. But I think we could win it all. I think we could win the Big Ten again. I definitely think defensively, we can go through the position groups if you want. I think we'll be very good. I think defensively, this will be a top 3-4 defense in the country again. I saw Bill Connolly's projections. I think he has Ohio State and Michigan 1-2 on defense in the country. I think the offensive line, we're at the point now, Mark, of where it was for many years when you and I were growing up. We're going to have a top 4 or 5 offensive line in the Big Ten now pretty much every year. It's just a matter of, are they really good or are they special? 2021, they were special. 2022, they were special. Last year, I just thought they were really good. We actually didn't get special till our best lineman, Zach Zinter, got hurt, because that allowed us to actually now play guys at more natural positions. We were playing guards at tackles all year long. And you saw that when we got to Penn State, we couldn't block them on the edge at all. I thought the numbers we showed on offensive line were very good. And so when I look around, okay, this team, I think, is more prepared to defend its Big Ten championship than I thought a couple of months ago. So then you start looking at what do I see right now that's not Big Ten championship worthy? Well, kicker for sure. Okay, that we don't have. And when you play complementary football like we do, that's a huge point of emphasis for us. I think we'll absolutely go into the portal to get a kicker like we did with the Louisville kid last year who helped us beat you guys. He made every big kick in that game. I think we'll do that again. I don't see a kicker that I would be comfortable putting out there for a 45-yarder to win or ice a game in the fourth quarter. And when you're playing the schedule we are this year, that's a big thing. And then quarterback. And I actually think if we were playing the more backloaded schedule, I might still be more comfortable with letting Orji grow, but we're not, and we're going to play Texas week 2. Fresno State week 1 isn't, that ain't That's not a warm-up, man. That ain't Hawaii. Okay. I mean, we'll be favored by a couple of touchdowns. We'll probably win by that much, but that's one of the better group of 5 programs. By the time we get to October 1, we're going to play USC and Texas. So, yeah, I mean, you don't want to lose 2 games. And then you have, I think with our schedule, we could probably go 9-3 and still be in the 12-team playoff. But if you've got 2 losses by the time we get to October, man, that margin for error is really low. So that's what has me concerned. Now, when I did the video right after the spring game, I kind of forgot about Jack Tuttle. So the reason why I think he's relevant here, even though he didn't play all spring, is to me, any transfer we would bring in has to at least be better than him. You see what I'm saying? Because in some respects, he kind of fits the mode of the transfer we'd bring in. We'd bring in a guy that missed all spring. We'd want to bring in a guy that's only a 1-year rental, because that way it doesn't disrupt the quarterback room where a bunch of guys are transferring out. Okay. And that's kind of Tuttle. And plus he knows the program and he's been around for going on 2 years now. So thinking about that, I don't know that player will be available. Like, can I say right now, I'd rather have Peyton Thorne over Jack Tuttle, Davis Warren, or Alex Orji? No, I can't say that for sure. I think I might, but when you're bringing in a quarterback this late and what that can do to chemistry and the transfer portal, you only bring in a guy that you're like, I know right now that's better than anybody we have. I don't know that Peyton Thorne, I don't even know he's going to jump I'm just using him as an example because he jumped out of Michigan State last year. He went portaling after the spring game. So that kind of a player. All right. Can I say right now for sure that Peyton Thorne would be better than anybody we have come August 31? No, I can't say that. And I do think if we're going to bring somebody in, it has to be somebody better than that. The thing that concerned me about Orji in the game is Davis Warren came back into the game and led a touchdown drive late and kind of punched Alex Orji in the mouth a little bit from a competition standpoint. And I don't think Orji responded very well. And then Davis Warren came back in the game and did it again. And so that kind of concerns me. Our program's not structured like yours. It's not a quarterback driven program. But Orji's not Joe Milton. That's a lazy take people are throwing out there. They're both black and recently played at Michigan. That's where the comparisons end. They're totally different players. Alex Orji's a way better athlete than Joe Milton ever was. Alex Orji was the number 1 athlete on our relative athletic scoring in our program last year. When we sent 19 guys to the combine, Alex Orji was the best athlete in the program last year. So he is certainly that this year. You're thinking more of a Terrell Pryor kind of a player. His skill set, if you want to compare him to Michigan quarterbacks, it's closer to Denard Robinson than Joe Milton. And so, he reminds me a lot of Terrell Pryor where he was at early in his career. But the problem is Orji's also in his 3rd year. And so, if he were where Terrell Pryor was as a freshman, he would have been a Terrell Pryor level recruit. But it's taken him 2 years of development to look like Terrell Pryor looked like as a freshman. And so I can see this being a year where 30 to 24 games go against us because of the quarterback position. And in that respects, I'm worried about a 2017 kind of a year where we waste a national championship defense. If you go back and look at how good we were on defense that year, a lot of guys that went on to play in the NFL still are playing in the NFL. I am concerned about wasting that kind of a defense because of where we're at quarterback. I want to believe Davis Warren can be a Cade McNamara-like player. He's been a spring game hero before. He played very well the whole game. I thought he made a statement, threw well under pressure. But at least with Cade, we had that Rutgers game in the COVID year. He had done something meaningful on a Saturday, and Davis Warren has not. So if this was more of a rebuilding year, then I would not be worried about the quarterback position. But because of how good I think this team is, I am concerned about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. And Rob is wanting a Steve Mark debate. I don't think this is going to form into one of those. Not today. I don't believe so. It doesn't look like it unless we want to go historical, because this is my take. And I only take our viewership back a couple hours, we were doing our Ohio State live stream, and you can imagine what my Ohio State writers have to say about Michigan's chances coming up this year. It's like an 8-4 ceiling. I stuck up for Michigan because I think Vegas is right there at 9.5. And after what I saw in the spring game, I was impressed with the continued physicality.
Yep.
And just the nature of the culture being advanced, cultivated, and it continuing. The continuity is exceptional, and the coaching staff strategy, the approach has all been well orchestrated with intent on how to continue what has been built.
I agree. I mean, I would urge people, go watch last year's spring game and this one back to back. From the weather, everything, it looks exactly the same. Last year, a fourth string running back who wasn't going to play in the fall ran for over 100 yards, Benjamin Hall. This year, a fourth string running back who's not going to play in the fall, Taviar Dunlap, basically did it. The one difference, though, is you had J.J. McCarthy wearing the white quarterback jersey. That's the difference. Okay, and so I mean, I think you look at last year, there was real concern. They had a starting corner opposite Will Johnson. I think we've got two guys better than what we had coming out of spring last year in Jair Hill and the big Ohio kid that I can't remember. Waller is who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So this team, I knew that the top line players would be good with who, those guys that they got to stay. I was concerned about the depth given the caliber of schedule we're playing. Our depth is really good. Again, the player development is there. The reestablishment of Michigan as a culture and a program that we saw from Bo to Mo to Lloyd, that's where it's back there again. Doesn't mean that Sharon Moore couldn't be terrible at this and wreck it in 2 or 3 years, and we'll find that out. But we're not debating the 2026 season, Mark, are we? We're debating this season. And this season and this team, you are correct. And it was way more impressive than what I expected it to be. If we would have done this a month ago, I would have been where your Bucknet writers are. Okay. But seeing now with my own eyes, physically, this looks like a Big Ten championship contender. So now I'm a little more, now I am way more concerned about the quarterback position than I would have been a month ago.
Steve's here for another 30 minutes. And of course, Michigan Podcast is the place to be for Michigan football coverage on a regular basis. And nobody lays out the angles like Steve does on Michigan football and the Big Ten, which leads us to, and again, comments and questions we will take in the chat, including here from, this is Minnesota Dave, Steve, and he's just making sure, is the Big Ten YouTube podcast still available?
It is. My producer and co-host Eric.
We can't hear you, Steve. If you can hear me, Steve, back out and hopefully we'll be able to. We cannot hear you. Yeah, we cannot hear you. I would dump completely out and try to come back in if you can hear me. All right, so Dave, yes. So the short answer is that yes, the Bigger Ten is still available. They've had some family situations there, and they will be able to come on back with the Bigger Ten. I get the invites to the Michigan Podcast. I don't get the invites to the Bigger Ten. I would love to dive in on the Bigger Ten podcast. So maybe Steve's listening, and I'm going to tell him that as soon as he can hear me. Steve, you back with us?
I am, man. This
Excellent.
app hates my guts. I don't know why, but it hates me. But go ahead.
That's okay. There might be some nefarious something there that if we really delved into it. But Steve, I was saying as we were waiting for you there in response to Dave, so you were explaining that with family situations and otherwise, the Bigger Ten has been on a hiatus.
Yeah, we'll be back to wrap up spring football on Michigan Podcast this week, and then the following week on Bigger Ten, and then we'll be off for a few weeks, and we'll kick off another season sometime in June. And
Steve, as you know, I never take for granted any invite onto the Michigan Podcast. I've been coming on there for 3 or 4 years, whatever the time frame has been. I never take it for granted. I often think, why in the world is he bringing me on here with my Michigan football take? But I would love to join the Bigger Ten once, just to give an overall conference look. I would love to do that
All right. We can make that work sometime. You bet.
At some point.
Sure.
Because we love Big Ten football, of course, and it's a different Big Ten. I want to get to that, but I want to, again, tackle this quarterback situation. So I made the analysis very early last season at some point when Jalen Milroe turned the corner, and then we knew what Alex Orji was probably, what his skill set looked like, what he looked like. I made that comparison. It seems like a lot of people are making that comparison now. Jalen Milroe, there's a difference between just having the arm strength, like it appears Alex Orji does, to just throw the ball 70 yards, versus being a good deep ball thrower, which we don't know that he is. Jalen Milroe showed us last year. You don't want him making decisions, but man, if that dude is striking down that 9 seam on the post, he can sling it like few can. So are there comparisons there that you think are viable?
I think this is an important point that you're raising, because I think a lot of fans think guy runs fast, throws far, can be a great quarterback. It depends on the system you're in. Okay. And so the Alabama system was able to take advantage of the fact that Jalen Milroe was an exceptional athlete running the ball, and then had excellent touch to throw down the field when the play breaks down and the defense is now in a scramble drill because he's outside the pocket. All right. But the problem with that is that's not our offense, and that's not our offensive scheme. And so the offensive scheme at Michigan is not a high risk, high reward system. It's just not. It's a system of complementary football and not making mistakes. And if you go back to Denard Robinson, you would see a pattern in Denard's career where he would be the September Heisman winner, like all 4 years he was there. And then we get further into Big Ten football, and Big Ten defensive coordinators have more film to look at, and they're like, we're just going to sit back. And we're going to prove you. We're going to make you prove that you can complete those 8 to 15-yard completions. Otherwise, we're not going to play man-to-man. We're not going to bunch up on the line of scrimmage, let you find a crease and house us, have our defensive backs with their backs turned to you 30 yards down the field, so you get outside the pocket and turn a scramble drill into a 40-yard run. We're not going to let you do that. All right? And what you would often see throughout Denard's career is, as the season went on and the book was out that this is not a guy that can consistently complete that gimme pass, then you would see his rushing yardage, the ground would shrink beneath his feet. I think there's a real concern with that with Alex Orji. I thought he missed way too many easy throws. His best throw is on a gotta have it on 4th and 5. He threw it a perfect laser into a tight window to move the chains. But our system is designed to not get to 4th and 5 very often, Mark. All right. Our system is designed that you can convert on 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4. Okay. And I mean, he just missed a lot of throws. And with his mobility, the amount of play actions and waggles and sprint out throws off of play action, guys are going to be wide open in the flats, Mark. I mean, Donovan Edwards could have 1,000 yards receiving, just catching balls in the flat from this guy. But I got to see that he can complete those. I don't really care if he can complete a missile. It's not a video game. I don't really care if he can complete a missile 60 yards downfield like Jalen Milroe. We beat that guy in the playoffs. Mark, why? Because Alabama didn't trust him to make the gimme throws. And we knew that. So we're like, well, we're not going to bunch up. We're not going to let you just get out of the pocket. All right. We're going to collapse the pocket on you and see if you can step up in the pocket and deliver that throw down the field. That's not who he was last year. That's why we beat them. And the only reason the game was as close as it was is we made a lot of mistakes offensively in that game. Otherwise, that game was exactly the perfect framework of a Michigan win. And so in this same case, a quarterback may do that once if he's great twice a game. And that'll be all the highlights that fans see. But games are really won by, can you continue to make the consistent available play? Our offense schemes tight ends open basically every single play. And I just didn't see a guy that I saw a guy who can just take what the defense can give him. Because given how good we'll be defensively, given how good the running game will be again, I think we could win the Big Ten with another Cade McNamara-like quarterback. But I got to see that he's able to do that. I mean, what I saw was a guy that struggled to make the gimme throws. And the problem with that, when you're as gifted of a runner as he is, those gimme throws are going to be there all the time because they have to account for you running the football. Then if you can't make those gimme throws, the reverse also becomes true market and impacts your ability to be a capable running threat, because now the defense doesn't respect that you're going to find Colston Loveland 10 yards up the seam because the linebacker got caught spying on you. You see what I'm saying? That's the killer stuff. And I just didn't see that on Saturday.
So do you possibly default to, without further breaking down Alex Orji, because what I saw was the first two throws of the game, I thought, okay, there was like one at the feet of the fullback, Bredson, coming out of the backfield. Then there was great separation by the wide receiver going to the sideline, and he threw it way into coverage, way behind him. And in a different situation, that would have been picked. He did get into the flow and threw some good balls at times, but you got to have a guy that's not going to throw the ball in harm's way a couple times per game. So you brought up Tuttle. I'll bring back Warren because, as you mentioned, threw well under pressure. Very first pass completion of the day on like a 3rd and medium. He's like backpedaling with a rusher coming right at his face, and he throws it not across his body, but a difficult throw to the tight end on a rope. Now, maybe if you want to play true Michigan football to a Big Ten championship, maybe he's your lower grade John Navarre, Chad Henne type to get you to the promised land.
Maybe. What'll be interesting with Tuttle is also a very good runner. Now, he's not an Alex Orji level of athlete. He's not a JJ McCarthy level of athlete. I think people have no clue what kind of an athlete JJ is. We're talking about a legitimate 4.5 guy. But Tuttle's a much better athlete than Davis Warren, and Tuttle can take 3rd and 6 and turn that into a first down with his legs. And so I don't know how much of a factor it is for him not being there all spring, given the guy's in his 7th year. I think he has kind of the same shoulder injury that JJ had 2 years ago, but he opted for surgery instead of rehab. So he's totally out. Okay. I don't know, not being there in the spring, how much that'll matter to him, given his experience overall and in the system. It doesn't help his case, though. I do think the performance of Alex Orji helps his case. Now, here's what Orji has going for him. Of all the quarterbacks we have on the roster, he is the one guy that is special at something, and that we know is special at something. And that can be very tantalizing to a coaching staff to say, we can work with that, right? And again, if we were starting like the last 2 years, I don't even think we're having this conversation. I think we'd be like, yeah, the whole analysis would be, some throws in the dirt, but man, he can move that body. And I guess we'll have that preseason and work on that. That's what we'd be saying that right now, but we don't have a preseason now. We're playing Texas week 2, and we're playing USC 2 weeks after that. So, we don't have that. And that's why this has got to be somebody, given how good the defense will be, how good the running game will be. The first few weeks of the year, we need a quarterback that will not lose us those games. Doesn't have to win them, but he can't lose them.
Jackson, thank you so much for the contribution. Jackson is asking, Steve, do you think Sharon Moore is the next Ryan Day, or do you think he will be better than Ryan Day?
Kind of hard to be better than Ryan Day. I mean, his record is beyond ridiculous. And I believe if Marvin Harrison doesn't get knocked out of that game 2 years ago, he wins the national championship. Okay. I think what's happened here is that Michigan is Jim Harbaugh finally figured out he had to be a college football coach. And, you and I talked years ago that what impressed me the most about Urban Meyer at Ohio State is that despite the fact it's a football factory, despite all the recruiting rankings, it's actually run like a college football program still. There's still esprit de corps. There's still a connectivity among the players. It may have maybe an NFL farm team. It may not be as academically arrogant about its reputation as Michigan is, but it's still run like a college football program. Guys are still loyal to each other and the program. And I think that, ironically, Michigan was run more like an NFL team. And I think the last few years after the bottom fell out in 2020, I think Jimmy realized, these guys just don't need a technocratic football coach. They need a leader. They need a father figure. And he ran it more like a college football program. And I think that, and then the contrast in styles is what has hurt Ohio State in this rivalry the last few years. What I am very fascinated to see is, looking at it from the maize and blue perspective, is I am seeing Ryan Day now do what Jim Harbaugh did in 2019, where Jim Harbaugh got tired of getting his teeth kicked in, was desperate, to get over this hump, and hires Josh Gaddis and tries to go Ohio State. Let's bring in 7 wide receivers, and we're going to do speed and space. Okay. And and that just never worked. And I kind of see Ryan Day now saying, well, plus quarterback who can move the chains, manage the game, go get 2 dynamic running backs. Geez, I've seen that formula before, Mark. Are you familiar with that? Have you seen anybody else try doing that? It seems like a total reversal. Now, whether it'll work out better for y'all than it did for us in 2019, we'll see. I'm fascinated, but if we are going to play that way, then I'm ironically, I'm less concerned about the quarterback against Ohio State than I am opening the game, the opening part of the year. Because if that's how Ohio State wants to play now, well, okay, we're comfortable playing in November, first one to 24, first one to 28 wins. Okay, we can do that, which by today's standards in college football is a low-scoring game. All right, I'm much more concerned about playing Steve Sarkisian and Lincoln Riley on fast tracks in September, where even if we play great defense, maybe they still score 28 or 31. I'm much more. Does that make sense? I'm actually more concerned about that.
Totally get it. Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. Please check it out if you're not aware. And the Bigger 10 as well. You can find that on the same site right here on YouTube, Michigan Podcast, michiganpodcast.com as well. I love getting your take on Iowa football, and you've got a perspective there as you do across the nation and, of course, the Big Ten. So I was clamoring. We do a weekly Iowa show. I was clamoring after the season, go into the transfer portal and get a quarterback, Iowa. Cade McNamara has been brittle. He's played 7 games in 2 years. And I think Iowa fans were expecting more of a savior out of Cade McNamara, and he's not that guy. He can run the offense at Iowa and do the things to not get in the way of the defense and the special teams, certainly if he's prepared, but he's still not on the field, although Kirk says that he's prepared to take the reins in August and he'll be fine. They have Deacon Hill, who was certainly near disaster at times. Again, had he been playing for another team last year, he's not a good player, but he moves on, but it's a depth situation. So now they're in a place where there aren't transfer portal quarterbacks out there that are going to come in and start for a top 15 or 20 team in the country. They should have made this move sooner, and now they've got to get somebody just as a depth piece at quarterback at least. I
guess I kind of took it that Deacon Hill leaving, and then 5 minutes later, Northwestern starting quarterback goes into the transfer portal. I maybe I'm wrong and conspiratorial, but the way things work nowadays, I kind of took those things as fairly interrelated, if you know what I'm saying. Now, I have no inside word on that.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that, too. Yep.
Yeah, that's just my own 10,000-foot view.
But he's not that good.
He's definitely better than Deacon Hill. He's definitely better than Deacon Hill.
He's hit 69% on 200 pass attempts in the Big Ten.
Yes.
So, yes, he can hit the open throw.
Yes. The thing that concerns me about Cade is Iowa fan has never really had a chance to see Cade McNamara. He got hurt early in camp last year with that knee, and just was never 100% at any point last year. So I don't know, man. That's 2 knee injuries in a row, 3 really. I mean, he had a different injury. It wasn't a knee injury, but a different injury with us. Then he had the injury in camp. Then he got hurt once the season, in the middle of the year. I mean, that's a lot for a guy to overcome. He has not played a lot of meaningful, high leverage football since 2021. So they absolutely need to bring in a quarterback. But I kind of took the sequence of events there to mean that was their guy.
Matthew, thank you for the contribution. I'm guessing if Steve is as adamant about his predictions as I know that he is, that he really doesn't have a prediction, but I'll leave it up to you. Early prediction on Texas and Michigan.
I don't know. Because, I'm a big NFL draft guy. And I don't understand how Texas is ranked so high in these returning production numbers, because they've got virtually every meaningful player that made a play that mattered last year on offense or defense is going in the first 3 rounds of the draft this weekend. And so I don't really think Quinn Ewers is that great. Now I say that, probably maybe he'll come out and bomb us, but I'm not even sure he's the best quarterback on his own team, frankly. So, but I have a lot of respect for Sarkisian's ability to coordinate an offense. Their overall talent level is going to be phenomenal the way they've recruited the last few years. So I don't know. I think that that's a Styles makes fights game. All right. I think if it's the first one to 27 wins, I think we will win. I think if you've got to go 30 plus, then that the game was played at their tempo. I still don't think that I'm not really sure there's almost any team in college football, unless it's a Georgia, that can beat us in a line of scrimmage game. I would still take our combination of offensive line and defensive line, although it's inverted. The last couple of years, the offensive line was up here and then the defensive line was kind of here. Now it's the other way around. But I don't know how many teams on our schedule are going to block us this year. I think this is the best defensive tackle duo I've ever seen at Michigan, Mark, ever seen. And I think the guys on the edges, the entire starting defensive line that stopped Alabama in the Rose Bowl is this year's starting defensive line. So you have to ask yourself, can you block us? I don't know that they can. But I think that, but I'm really concerned about our quarterback position in that game, giving them a short field or two, and putting the defense at a disadvantage. But it's way too early to discuss that quite yet.
Steve, I would have loved to have seen these 4 teams from the West Coast enter the Big Ten last year with the 4 or the 3 great quarterbacks going up against these defenses.
Yeah.
We're not going to get that. As an old line Big Ten guy, do you take any pride in, much like it was with Rutgers and Maryland, especially with Nebraska joining the league? We want to suppress them, keep them down. We want to show that the Big Ten was better. We want to see them, they're not going to finish obviously 15th through 18th in the league, but we want to show that Big Ten football is superior and they're going to have to earn their stripes first. Do you care about making them look bad?
I really don't. I'm sorry. I really, and the reason why is because we're not bringing in Rutgers and Maryland, Mark. I mean, we're bringing in, USC, Oregon, Washington, and UCLA hasn't, but USC, Oregon, and Washington have all won national championships in the last 30 years. Okay. So it's not the same thing as bringing in those guys. I mean, these are, and you and I are from a generation where UCLA was actually the dominant team for a long time coming out of Los Angeles under Terry Donahue, so I just think those 4 names are way bigger than anything Rutgers or Maryland presents. When it comes to Nebraska, I mean, their branding is right there, if not superior to some. And I felt that way a little bit more about them because they were just a few years coming off their dominant run, but now this thing's become so diluted. I don't have any form of conference pride or on that level at all. I want to see Big Ten teams in general do well, but I've got a lot of built-in respect for Oregon, USC, Washington as programs.
We get into these arguments here on a regular basis. So did you have that conference pride in, let's say, 1990?
Oh, yeah.
You wanted Big Ten teams to play well outside the conference.
I still want Big Ten teams to play well. I guess I just don't feel like, you guys aren't good enough to join the T-Birds or the Pink Ladies yet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's been so much movement and everything now. You're in the Big Ten, you're grafted in, man. Okay, you're in the Big Ten. I mean, next summer, we're going to be watching off-season Big Ten Network specials about the 91 national championship Washington Huskies and UCLA's, back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners of Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. I mean, the Big Ten's just going to absorb all of that history and legacy and start marketing it as its own in about 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's just a different time now.
Now, we have this argument here again on a daily basis. I don't start these up, but this Michigan Ohio State vitriol in the chat is just nonstop 365 days. Even to the most petty statistics, you know, we had a guy this morning that was finding to thread a needle in which he could find Michigan with a series advantage over the last 47 years. So that was posted up there. Okay, it's 23, 22, and 2. Okay, all right, great. So we had a discussion, you and I, a year or two ago about the all-time magnitude of these two programs. And I got to say, Steve, although it was a great conversation, appreciated everything, of course, I was a bit disappointed out of the gate because you just didn't ram me with Michigan's the greater all-time program. You said it's real close.
I mean, I'm a data guy. It's very close. I mean, there's a reason why it's the greatest rivalry in sports. It's because it's really close. I mean, these are, Michigan basically mainstreamed college football under Fielding Yost. Michigan essentially took it from an Ivy League affair and made it a national sport. Michigan created the Rose Bowl. Michigan literally created the Big Ten Conference. Much of what we know today, Michigan literally created two-platoon football. Okay, I mean, much of what we know today, and everybody likes to talk about Newt Rockne creating the forward pass, but really, it was Benny Friedman back in the 30s was really the first celebrated passing quarterback in the history of college football. I mean, much of what we know today, Tom Harmon in many respects was the first crossover major star into pop culture in college football. Many of the things that we take for granted today as built-in fundamentals and metrics of the sport, Michigan either created or hand-to-hand in creating. But the level of consistent excellence that Ohio State has had since it figured itself out as a program post-World War II, I mean, if you're going post-World War II, that's the best program. It has not had the down period that Notre Dame and Michigan has had or in Alabama has had, okay? You could argue that the three greatest coaches in Big Ten history are all, or at least post-World War II, so in the Big Ten, are all Buckeyes. If you look at the winning percentages of Urban Meyer, Jim Tressel, and Woody Hayes, you know, so our program's resurgence was an emulation of Ohio State. We hired Woody's chosen successor to be the head coach, who was once Woody's prized offensive coordinator and assistant coach. We ran Ohio State's offense. We ran Ohio State's drills. You know, I mean, that was how we, resurrected our program 50 years ago under Bo. So there's so much crossover. Many of the greatest Michigan players are from Ohio. You're really, I mean, it's a little bit like arguing what's the greatest science fiction franchise, Star Wars or Star Trek. I mean, okay. I mean, different times and different iterations, one's better than the other, but there's a reason why they both have such devoted, zealous followings. It's because of their overall legacies of greatness. And so I just, I don't get fired up unless I think there's a real definitive answer about something that we're missing. And in this case, I don't. I think that's what makes it a great rivalry, makes it a lot of fun.
You're talking to a guy, Steve, who admires and appreciates those two brands, Star Wars and Star Trek. But if I get my druthers, I sit down and watch Lost in Space.
Yeah, I don't, but good luck to you.
I love the campy 1960s Lost in Space with Dr. Smith. Love that. So if you're into win totals, if you're into point spreads, money lines, betting angles, of course, join Steve at Michigan Podcast as well. Is there anything about this particular season or just in general that you do this time of year to get yourself ready to get ahead of those lines and the win totals?
Well, you know that I had previously, since 2017, I had done my team total talent ratings of rosters, and those have been very successful in win total best bets that I usually put out around Memorial Day. And since 2017, those are something like 72%, some crazy number. This year I've abandoned the team total talent rating, Mark. what's going on in the transfer portal. Whole rosters are being recreated. I can't keep up with it. I just and so I'm trying to figure out, once rosters settle down here and the portal closes around the 1st of May, what will I do at that point to try to come up with another edge that's more accurate with the amount of comings and goings that are happening in the portal. It would have to be my full-time job to keep track of it, and I just have too many other things going on. I couldn't do it. When I look at our team, I go unit by unit, and I ask myself, based on what I know of baseline recruiting profiles for the other teams in our league and on our schedule, and what I know of what they have coming back. And that's where, being a student of the NFL draft helps me, because helps me also then realize who's got what coming back, who didn't come in the draft, etc. If I look at our team unit by unit, I ask myself, do I think that's in an 18-team league, a top 4 unit realistically now or by the end of the year in the Big Ten? When I look at running back, yes. When I look at offensive line, yes. When I look at wide receiver, my answer is no, but it's because the numbers aren't there. I think the first 3 guys are good enough for our system. Like, they wouldn't start for you guys, but for our system, they're good enough. A wide receiver is not a position we stress at Michigan anymore. When I look at defensive line, linebacker, I think linebacker will be better than it was last year. I can make an argument Jayshon Barn will be the number 1 linebacker picked in the draft next year too. Secondary, absolutely. Quarterback, no. Special teams, when I throw in the kicker situation, no. So we're kind of back to where we started again, And so I would be very confident saying every position group, other than wide receiver, quarterback, and special teams, is minimum top 4 in the Big Ten, either now or by the end of the year. Wide receiver for us, though, you put an asterisk there. It's just not a position we stress, that we stress at Michigan. And our best receivers every year have like 30 or 40 catches. Okay. So no, it's not a top 4 unit, but at Michigan, it doesn't have to be. We just need more warm bodies. We've only got like 3 high level players there. We need at least another couple of guys out of the portal. The other 2, quarterback and kicker. I don't believe the kicker is on campus at all. That could get us to where we need to be. And I am concerned that the quarterback is not. But I could be convinced otherwise. I just don't have that evidence, has not presented itself yet. It would have to be evidence that occurs later in the summer.
Steve, if you have another minute, I would like to offer up this question from Corey Bratta. He's our co-host at the Iowa channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Steve, do you observe many younger Michigan fans to have an insecure persona in spite of the program's recent national success? If so, is this a result of Ohio State's dominance during much of the 21st century?
No, I mean, I will tell you, I don't read my replies in any walk of life that I'm involved in very often. Replies and comment sections are where truth and sanity go to die in many cases. All right. And I will tell you, for me, my replies are 10-1 buck nuts. I mean, it's just not even close. I mean, the amount of responses, I have to mute Ohio State fans. I don't block anybody. I have to mute Ohio State fans so I can see what Michigan fans think. Okay. So, I mean, the level of obsession from Ohio State fans that's in my mentions is just like, and I mean, I work full-time in politics, man. I work around obsession a lot. And the level of obsession in my mentions from Ohio State fans at the Michigan Podcast X account, which has like 7,500 followers, it makes my eyes bulge, So that stands out to me more than, if anything. I think younger Michigan fans are more arrogant because to them this is real life. I would think it'd be the older Michigan fans that would be sensitive and worried because they're still coming out of a 20-year butt whooping.
Steve, I explained this to our Michigan contingent the other day, and I think you will understand this. This is what really irks Ohio State fans. is Ohio State owned the conference for 20 years by a decisive margin. Even on years in which they did not win the Big Ten, it was pretty much understood Ohio State slipped up. They're really the best team, but Michigan State slipped by them, whatever. They're still the best team. Michigan has ascended and eclipsed, to its credit, eclipsed Ohio State while Ohio State has stayed elite.
Yeah.
Ohio State took advantage of Michigan largely being down. Michigan's been able to eclipse an elite Ohio State program. So it is difficult, and I speak from my own personal bias. It is tough to still be that elite, still be a top 3 to 4 program in the country, and take a rear end kicking for 3 consecutive years and still believe that you are the best and still just kind of not believe that this is real.
Totally get it. And I think for people that don't know the history of this rivalry, this has not been a consistently both teams are great at the same time rivalry.
Mid-70s.
That's what makes the 10-year war stand out. That both teams were at their, well, until the last 3 years, Woody Hayes didn't score an offensive touchdown against Michigan his last 3 years of the rivalry. But when Michigan reemerged in '69 under Bo, that was arguably Woody Hayes' best team that Bo beat. And Woody said that for many, many years after he passed, or after he coached, that might have been the best team that he had. So you take away the 10-year war. I mean, you go back to the John Cooper era. In 1993, Michigan beat Ohio State 28-0. We were 7-4. And 1995 was the 300-yard game for Biaka Batuka. We were 9-3. In 1996, that was the biggest point spread since 1969 in the Michigan-Ohio State game. Ohio State was about a 16-point favorite against Michigan. Michigan was 7-3 coming into the game when Michigan won that game 13-9. So a lot of the years that Michigan beat John Cooper, Ohio State was clearly the better team throughout the course of the season, or Michigan had underachieved a lot during those years. You look at the exceptions. 97, we were number 1. Ohio State was number 4. Okay, but what's been really rare, and I give Jerry DiNardo credit. He called this a few years ago after 2021. He said when he was after they finished the fall camp tour for the BTN, he said the summer of 2022. I said, listen, man, I'm looking at the rosters for Michigan, Ohio State. These guys aren't going anywhere. I mean, he goes, I could see another 10-year war. Now, we just lost a Hall of Fame coach. Whether Sharon Moore's test will not be this year. I don't know that our record with who we had coming back and the caliber of schedule, just based on what we've seen out of Sharon, he's been tested. He's coached games without Jim. Okay. I don't know that our record be that much different with or without Jim. Would more of the assistants who left had stayed? Maybe. Okay. But I think the coaching staff Sharon has accumulated is very impressive, frankly. I think we were going to lose Jesse Minter regardless of whether Jim left or not. He wanted to go to the NFL. So I think the true test for Sharon Moore about whether he can keep us there is going to come starting next year. But right now, I think both of these, again, I think they're clearly the 2 best teams in the league, except for the quarterback position, where Oregon, I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Look at his career numbers. He's got those kinds of numbers in his career. And now he's going to play another year and, in another offense that will feature him. I think he walks in as a Heisman Trophy candidate and the best quarterback in our league. But when I look at the rest of the league, I don't see a lot of great quarterbacks in the conference. And I think that's a real problem when you're playing us, because you're not going to be able to block us. And so if you've got to have a quarterback that slows that rush down a little bit, makes them think, hey, that guy's going to, if I lose contain, that guy's going to get outside the pocket, or, I better, honor the play action, or that guy might throw it over my head. There's not a lot of those quarterbacks in the league this year, Mark. There just aren't. USC doesn't really know who its quarterback is. It might be a kid that they wanted to get rid of, and then he had a great bowl game, or it might be a freshman. You guys basically went with a Jag plus and a guy that frankly was going to lose his job at Kansas State probably if he stayed. So that being said, I wish he was on our team, because at least I know that he is a competent player, and I don't have a guy right now that I know that about. So
it's amazing that I'm almost positive if Dillon Gabriel repeats his yardage and touchdown totals from last season, he will rank number 2 in both categories career.
Yeah.
At the end of this season.
So you basically just confirm what I said. That guy's a college football Hall of Famer. I don't think people know how good his numbers really are, how good he was last year at Oklahoma either. I mean,
you know what the caveat though is, Steve? You have to be, I'm sorry to interrupt. You have to be a first team All-American at least once to be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. I can't think Dillon Gabriel's been that.
No.
That's where they need to amend that ridiculous system.
If he does match if he gets to those numbers though, and does it in our league, I mean, look at, there's a reason why all these NFL teams right now are crawling over broken glass to trade up to get JJ McCarthy, who most people's big boards have anywhere from 16th to 23rd, and they want to draft him in the top 5. You know why? They looked at next year's quarterback crop in the NFL coming out, and they're like, got to get this guy now. Maybe a Joe Burrow comes out of nowhere that we're not talking about right now, but in terms of draft boards heading into next year right now, there is not a guy that everyone's like, oh yeah, that's your number 1 pick in the draft. That guy's not there. So if Dillon Gabriel does what he did at Oklahoma last year in our league, and they're playing Ohio State or Michigan in Indianapolis for the championship, then I think he is a first team All-American probably, and probably going to New York for the Heisman Trophy. It's just a matter of whether he wins it or not.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. And for as much as I am proud to promote his football platform there at Michigan podcast, and I will do it every day, I will every day and twice on Saturday promote what Steve does on a regular basis. The Steve Deace Show, at Steve Deace Show. Go there. This guy's a patriot to the largest degree, stands up for truth and righteousness and holiness. Steve, we thank you for what you do. We know that you take bullets on a daily basis and you stand up for what's right. And it's to be admired.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for being here and taking the time for us.
You bet. It was always fun.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. We so much appreciate Steve being here to break down Michigan, the Big Ten, and the nation. And we've got 3 more shows, 3 more live streams here at the Voice of College Football. And that would be Florida State Live at 6, Miami Live at 7. And then we've got an NFL draft preview that we just thought, what the heck, let's do it live at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So again, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7 on those respective channels. NFL draft preview at 9 right here at the Voice of College Football. So that's 1, 2, 3. Is that 6 live streams today? We just keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Tell your friends, everybody else that loves college football, that this is the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. We appreciate you. Thanks for being here. And we will see you on the Florida State channel at 6 p.m. Eastern. Most of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize, you get entertained, and in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address, they want your phone number, they want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance. It's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago, and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me, and now for my Voice of College Football community.